Burgess & Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Good to see you. Been a big
Yes.
week.
It's the end of a big week. You're
Big
right.
week. Ah, big week.
What a big week.
Oh,
Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess & Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation, and this week we've got the third part of our interview with Rachael Bishop, and she's going to give us some predictions for what's going to happen around technology and change in London. But as always, let's kick off with the news. So I'll go, Ben. So I saw not that. Let me see if I can find the right slide. Aha, here we go. So I saw this. So Beazley launches a digital trading division, which actually featured in TINtech London Market, which we're going to talk about a little bit as well today. And I thought this is interesting because it looks like it's going to be a separate entity. So Ian Fantozzi, who was a group operating officer, is now the CEO of Beazley Digital. And what I think is that Beazley have got it. I think they've got it here. So the first thing that Ian says is that technology is enabling, facilitating the placement and portfolio management, and importantly, it's kind of this digital distribution of channels, and not just offering one kind of channel, but a really multi-channel platform here. So portals, APIs, market hubs, and email, and then importantly supported by human activity experience, whatever else. And I think we've been talking about that for a while in various things. That quite often people try and shoehorn activity into a certain way of working. You have to log on to a certain platform. You have to do this process. You have to do this. Well, this is much more saying, hey, you work however you want to work. We'll take the friction out of it. You can get in touch with us however you want. We'll provide you with some portals, some APIs, whatever. But if you want to send us an email, hey, send us an email. Fine, no problem. We can handle that. And I truly believe that is a step forward. And what was interesting at TINtech was that we had James Wright, who's the head of the technology and innovation at Beazley Digital, just given a bit more detail around how this is going to work, and his kind of focus on customer and taking out friction for customer and delivering a customer experience that is better was hardly talked about the technology that would underpin it. It was all about customer and stuff that we've been talking about for a while. But so I think that's great.
Yeah, it's really good. I completely agree with you. It's nailed it in lots of ways, and language is right. It picks up all the right things. I think it's being evidenced as well that this multi-channel approach is really working. I've talked about it before, but in the claims portal area where there is quite a bit of that going on in the mid-market in the UK, for example, that is what's appealing to people, is that multi-channel. You can choose what channel you use to get your bit of information. And that takes the pressure off organizations as well if you set it up well, because you don't have to be constantly guessing what the question is going to be or trying to push people down one route, as you say, in a prescriptive way. So I think that this has been certainly my intuition about listening to brokers as well talk about placing and trading risks, is that it's not one system. It's they already use things like WhatsApp and things like that. So people are comfortable with using these things, but in some ways in this market, there is also discomfort with, shouldn't there be a one size fits all solution somewhere? And I think that was one of the questions at TINtech is, wow, there's all these different products and technologies and things like that. Yes, there is, but that is the way that technology markets work generally. There's lots of stuff coming out the whole time, and you pick and choose and you experiment, and try things out, and then in the end people come to a landing. So I like it. It's healthy. I think it's great. And the other thing is this sub branding thing, which is interesting. Yeah, so that's beginning to happen more and more.
That's really good. Okay, is yours a stat of the week, Ben?
Yeah,
here we go.
What's the word on the data street?
So this is something I think you talked about at TINtech London Market.
I did, and I just wish I'd had that intro. I forgot. We should have done it. Next conference, we've got to do it.
I forgot as well. There we are.
Never mind. They'd have loved it in the innovation stage. Never mind. So this was just a piece of data that I put up at the part of my talk at the conference this week on the innovation stage. I think it got quite a lot of traction really around what brands were doing, what tech brands were doing. We're looking at all sorts of brands in all sorts of different ways now, and this is all about engagement on social media. And the reason it's interesting, and this data really is interesting, and when we overlay it on the stuff we already collect, it just gets more interesting. Which is, what is the sort of story around the communication and what's happening with these different brands? And when you look at it, you can see actually there are big differences. There's a lot going on, and in some cases there's not a lot going on, and that's draws you to questions about, well, why are some people marketing like crazy and other people not marketing like crazy? What's going on? Do they understand marketing, or they're not doing it? So this chart here shows that DXC, for example, has 1.4 million. This is just LinkedIn data from very recent. This is 1.4 million followers for DXC. Now, DXC obviously, and this is a question the audience asked, I think Phil asked me actually this question, which was about, is this B2B you're talking about, Ben? And I said, well, it is, but actually a lot of the data is suggesting that these brands are starting to talk way beyond just the B2B and probably into the employees, if you like, of these organizations. If DXC has got 1.4 million, I don't think there are 1.4 million chief technology officers in the world. At least I hope there aren't, because that will be a problem. So it's interesting. They got 1.4, but then Verisk. Okay, Verisk, we know has only just become Verisk, and they've got white space at the bottom. But still, the next biggest has got quite a lot less in terms of followers. And the other thing, if you look at the right-hand side, is what we've started to analyze is what's the engagement per follower. This is likes or responses or whatever. So as you go up this, with the numbers build up, you can see that there is a drop off in terms of the engagement to some extent, which you'd expect because it's more mass marketing when they get to the top end there. But it also suggests that you can get at a targeted level great engagement. So if you look at DocuSoft, for example, they've got very strong engagement around whatever they write about, which on LinkedIn, as does Morning Data, even though they've only got very few followers. And then actually, Whitespace, for example, gets much better engagement than PPL. And PPL, which is supposedly the biggest trading platform now by far, hardly anything in terms of followers. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of questions, and I think the interesting thing is really what is going on. There is marketing going on. Quite a few people talked to me at the session about, oh yeah, let's talk about brand, because it is very important to us. And I was talking about partnering, co-branding. We've just seen what Beazley has done with that's its own brand, obviously. But then I was showing things like BritKai has a lot of play on the Microsoft, Google links, and Mosaic, for example, sent in a comment. They're really intertwined with DXC. So these things are happening, and this is happening a lot now. And this partnership and co-branding and technology enablement is a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. The amount of as you say, kind of branding activity and marketing activity that happens now on LinkedIn is quite quite something. In fact, we're going to talk about it in a minute in relation to the conference, and it's very powerful, of course, because if somebody writes about you in a positive way, that's much more powerful than you blowing your own trumpet. And I think there is of course then a danger that it works in the opposite way, that people can follow you and then post the negative stuff and go, it's terrible, it doesn't work.
Well, and that exactly, Jeremy, and I was really warning around that, saying you've got to make sure if you're going to do co-branding like this and do all this marketing and things, you've got to make sure that you've got the sort of relationship that's going to last, first of all, and if it's not, you've got to be clear about that. I think you've got to do what we call in the trade alignment on everything. So your values have to be aligned with this organization. I think you've got to be prepared for, particularly in the IT world of things and technology world of things going wrong, and then explaining that carefully and managing expectations. I think you can do that because it's part of the story of that world, but it's no good trying to brush things under the carpet and pretend it's all lovely when it's not. So there is a lot to do around and a lot to think about here. My warning, I think, is that a lot of the insurers and I think the tech companies are not very brand savvy, and that's not meant to be disparaging. I just think it's inexperience, or it's because they've basically been technology people and that's their interest. I get it. But if you're going to go into this stuff, you need to start to get brand savvy. You need to really start understanding your customers and who you're appealing to. I mean, who are those 1.4 million people, as you say, with, not so much engagement, but quite a bit of engagement with DXC. So that is, as you say, it's a lot of people to let down if it doesn't go right, but it's equally a lot of people to really boost your reputation and your credibility, and of course your bottom line and your business if it goes well. So it's and of course this is also about multi-channel, and it's about us starting to look and say, well, the conversations in these. About all of these businesses and all these changes are going on in all sorts of places, and all this sentiment, which is the next thing we'll look at, is really interesting. Does it? Someone asked me after the session, it'd be really interesting to look at what the impact of bad news or failure is within the tech industry on perceptions. And I said, yeah, exactly. That's what we will look at.
Great. Good. Right. Let's spend a couple of minutes just reflecting.
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is. On the big news of the week, which is, of course, TINtech. So as I said, last week sold out. Brilliant. And it was packed, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, yeah.
And so just picking up on that theme about LinkedIn, social media, tons of people reacting. There's you, Ben, actually.
Yeah, that shows I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was good. So lots of people commenting, lots of people there. It was really good. I just thought we could spend a couple of minutes really reflecting on the event, because I think and it's worth doing for a couple of reasons. I genuinely thought it was exciting to be there and see people again and start to have conversations, and it does just hammer home the importance of face-to-face and meeting and networking and all that stuff that was a few years ago was just kind of taken for granted. But I do think there's real importance around that. But I would say that, wouldn't I? But I felt the conversation was very positive in the room. And if you'd run that event a few years ago, there would have been a lot of whinging and whining about, oh, this doesn't work, we can't get data standards right, blah 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 blah. It was a lot more positive. It was a can-do spirit around the place. And I felt as the day went on, there was confidence in the room about IT and operations having a role and a purpose within organizations that has been, and we've talked about this before, they've enabled the work from home organization. They've enabled their organization to keep going and serve customers and all that stuff. And suddenly, they've got that confidence to go, okay, what else can we do to help the organization? I really felt that the conversations around people, around brand that we were just talking about there, the way that operations and IT can feed into that and help that, it was almost like a different, brand new event. it was something else, really.
Yeah, I agree. I was really surprised, actually. And in the same ways as you were, it was clearly a time where we've all come back together after a long time not being together. So you could just say, oh, that's just because people are like that. But I think there was something more to it than that. I think a lot of ideas have formed over the period. And I think a lot of relationships have formed such that, to me, it felt like a very easygoing kind of group of people. They were positive, they were confident. It felt, even though there were lots of competitors in the conference, and as you said, in the past, there's often quite a lot of friction in a way between the partners and the insurers and the techs and all that sort of thing, which I'm sure there still is, but it didn't feel like that. It felt more collaborative. It felt like people were talking on the same page a lot. I think my session, which was really, I had felt a bit before, God, this could be really random talking about tech brands. But the more I got into those data and started talking to people about it, I realized it did make sense, and it had come from somewhere. I can't even tell you where it had come from, really, a bit from data, a bit from a bit of an idea. But often that's the way of it, isn't it? The rhetoric that you listen to and talk about, and suddenly it starts to come together. And I think it did have that feel, actually, which was, yeah, God, there's tons of products and things, and some are going to fail and some are going to work and some are not, and modernization may not work, but actually there's enough going on to say this is going to move forward, I think was the feeling I had for the time I was there. I wasn't there in the evening when you were telling your jokes, but I missed that pinnacle moment.
It was, well, for me, it was a highlight.
I know. Other people said it was good too. I know you've pointed at those people and
I have
and asked them to give you testimonials. But I can appreciate it. It was good. I'm sorry I missed it. Really.
Yeah, that show business. It's all smoke and mirrors, really. But no, it was good. It was good fun. It was great to see everyone. And we're going to do a little bit of work about trying to pull together some of the outcomes from the day. So we'll share that with everyone as well. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Let's move things forward. So as I said at the top of the show, we've got the final part of our interview with Rachael Bishop. In this section, she's talking about future innovations in technology, their implications for the London market and wider insurance market as well. So let's play the interview and then we'll come back and just reflect on her thoughts. So here we go. Guest of the week. So I started off by saying what my predictions were, Rachael, being AI one of them. Have you got any trends that you're seeing that you're going to tip for this year and into 23?
So I think I'm not going to put a year on it, but certainly things that will continue to develop this year. Oh, have I got to put a year on it?
Got to put a date on it. I would love to see this year in 2022. There we go. All the remaining 11 months of it. I think DLT will become blockchain distributed ledger technology will become less of a freaky, isn't it Bitcoin, oh my gosh, dark web technology to, what it actually is, which is when it's used as a private blockchain, it is, it is a record of transactions that's held centrally. You can't argue with it. If you want to know what transaction happened, there it is, and you have access to it. That to me, for something like Lloyd's, if you could keep centrally a record of all the coverages and movements on a complex risk, how perfect would that be? You don't have to communicate to companies. You just go and take it off the table that's in the middle. So you've got that whole record of every piece of risk, everything that's insured is all there. You know who the insurer is, any transaction that's happened on it,
and it's on a table that you can access. You don't have to wait for whoever to open up their systems and you go and have a look. So I would like to see DLT become more part of our kind of underlying tech without us worrying about it. I think that will take a step forward in 2022. I think cyber is becoming harder to write, and I don't think it will be as profitable as it once was. That's getting more and more complex. I think the digital channel needs to become more seamless, or seamless. It can't be more seamless, can you? That kind of cross-channel experience. COVID really did accelerate some of that for us, which is great. COVID has done some great things, I would say. As horrendous as it's been, there's also been some really good things that have come out of it. So just being smoother across channels, responding to people in the way that they operate. I can't see us selling a policy over Snapchat, but if that's where people are talking, try and be there. I think that the whole kind of SaaS cloud is almost a hygiene factor now. If you're not on the cloud, you are going to struggle to take advantage of what is out there. So that for me is still front and central as something that should be in place. And if it's not, see how you can get there. And then I think more on kind of culture and the importance of culture, that will continue to grow. I think certainly during COVID, we learnt how to be kind to some extent. We realized, I know we always say people have home lives and, but you saw it in the raw, children coming up and saying, can I have a biscuit? And then coming back, well, there aren't any biscuits left. Can I have and that real kind of raw home life, I think it brought it to reality that I know people say they have busy lives at home. You actually saw that on screen. That being kind to each other, recognizing that there is a balance to be had, understanding that your employees, want to do a good job, but are balancing something else. Particularly in the kind of year of the Great Resignation last year, that whole culture and engagement piece will help retention. Probably those. I think the other kind of bit that gets scary is where Meta's going and NFTs and the kind of augmented reality world, which I'm happy to chat about, but is entertaining and different.
That is
the other one.
A whole show in itself. The metaverse.
The area that I've just got interested in talking about is the whole way that the Chinese technology market is particularly working, which is these multi-app systems, which are based off using various social networks of all sorts of different types, whether it be Alibaba or whatever their equivalent of Snapchat is. I forgot what it's called, but you get so many users on it, but then they basically link all these things up and then they link the payment systems in. That to me seems to have real power to be able to wash up onto the shores of even the commercial insurance industry, because if some of that starts to come in, and if it's from globally available apps that are not all that expensive, you could start to see that certainly parts of the insurance industry could change dramatically if you could do some of that stuff. Now, I don't know what it would be, but I could just see that, lots of people, lots of businesses even being able to just talk about their PI insurance and then just simply buy it off some kind of platform. And, I don't know, it's interesting. It's just that commoditization of things, on a more practical kind of example that's a bit closer to home, not owning a car just for, is it Volkswagen that say, or is it Volvo that say that people won't own cars from? Yeah, I think it was Volvo. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, Volvo won't, said that you won't. Yeah.
That whole not owning a car, being able to take something. I use Zipcar in London because I don't have a car in London. It's perfect. being able to take a commoditized product and tweak it and buy it without really engaging with any particular supplier isn't impossible. I don't know how much of an imperative there is for us to do it, to be honest. I can't see it being that interesting for people to push that tech. I just posted on LinkedIn today because there is it's London Lloyd's Maritime Institute. They've got a jetpack for dealing with piracy. So this guy just flies off a It's brilliant. But what I said in LinkedIn is, I'm really disappointed. When I was a child, we were practically promised flying cars. Where are they? Where is my flying car? I was almost guaranteed one of those. And if the technology isn't interesting to develop, it won't get developed. And that people are not seeing a market for flying cars, so they're not developing them. And I think the same with some of this kind of commoditized, sort of free floating product. Where's the incentive to develop that?
Well, there's got to be a business. It's got to fit with the business model, hasn't it? Really, and I think that it has to displace an existing business model efficiently and effectively if that's going to work. Which
it's got to serve someone.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, it has to be better than or cheaper than what went before as well. I think it's interesting because I think I presented probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago at one of Jeremy's conferences about autonomous cars and the Google Waymo, as it's called now, and quite a lot of people in the audience said, "Oh, it's really good, Ben. I think you're right as well. I think you're absolutely right." And I thought, I don't know whether I am at all. I just basically Googled it and thought it was interesting and spoke about it at the conference. But actually, we're still waiting. And all the stuff yesterday shows that, in fact, the insurance industry, in a way, is one of the ones that'll hold it up because they're saying we can't possibly insure anything where there might be systemic cyber attacks where all hundreds of cars crash at the same time or whatever. So it's much those kind of populist things almost, aren't they? They kind of seem very slow. Whereas actually sometimes it's the smaller things that seem to make a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, probably around the same time scale, 9-10 years ago, I was hearing at conferences, people were saying, or certainly a couple of speakers were saying, the really, really big thing for the future is the fact that your phone knows your location or technology knows your location and personalization. And you look at it and think, if only I could fast forward and figure out what that could mean in practice. And then you get Uber that knows exactly where you are. And you get the kind of personal experience and tailored experience. And I think it's having the imagination to go, wow, okay, if this computer or this system or this company knows exactly where I am, what's the use of that? And you've got things like FatMap and ski tracks and Waze, and it really was a truly future thinking thing to say if we had the imagination to use it. And I think the same with personalization. The more we can personalize, the more we can treat the individual rather than the thing they're buying, or I treat you as a car insurance buyer, or I treat you as a person who has a car who wants to insure it. There's some real innovation in that if we dig down. I think above all, the things that the thing that I remain optimistic about is just how much humans want to march forward, and it's terrifying because we march forward into stuff that honestly is incredibly scary, like connected autonomous weapons, DNA meddling, just changing stuff for the sake of it, hybrid human animal. You can go into dark areas, as we know, but ultimately humans will march forward. We will innovate. We will, we are trying now to heal the planet. Because we've destroyed it to an extent, although I think ultimately we've destroyed it in a way that means humans can't live, but other things will continue to live. But what I don't think you can do is make humans go backwards. So by saying, oh, it's all too scary, it's too much, we need to stop it. For instance, if you looked at Meta or NFTs, and you really thought about, oh my gosh, if I'm building a house in Meta, where's my real life sit with what's in the metaverse? Why am I spending money in a metaverse and on an NFT? It's not a real thing. I don't, you could get very scared about that. It feels incredibly weird, but we will progress forward. And so I think there has to be brighter minds than mine, certainly, that think about what is a safe area for us to go in and what is not a safe area for us to go in. So banning autonomous connected weapons gets my vote, and I didn't think of it as a group of people trying to do it. What I don't think you can do is say, oh, that's all wrong, beware, run away, because humans will just move towards it. So colonizing Mars, you can't just go, that just seems like a really bad idea, don't do it. You need to think about, okay, somebody is going to do that. What does that mean? What do we need to think about? What are the issues there? But I maintain optimism around what humans can achieve. I'd love technology to augment memory. Google Glass, that kind of augmented reality. Be able to walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, Jeremy, do you remember when we met in 1991 at such and such?" Would just be great. How much more personable would you be for that? Being able to augment physical decay, I think, is, broadly a good thing. I'm not anti-transhumanism. If we could augment what is decaying with us with age, it's scary. Some would say it's unnecessary. We all need to die at some point. On the other hand, why not? This is what I mean about marching forward. Laser eye surgery or replacement hips. Those are all augmenting the human body. Why is it scarier if you augment a hand? It's just because you can physically see it. And we don't like the idea of a cyborg hand because of Terminator and Star Wars, honestly. But, I think that's where we march forward, to just go, oh, I don't like the idea of augmenting the physical body with tech. We are going to do that, and we already do it. Move forward with it, figure out the best way to do it, get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is in commercial terms, there's an inevitability to it. And also my observation is it becomes a hygiene factor very quickly. So one of my questions always is, how long is the competitive advantage in any technological advance? And it's probably not very long at all. And I feel that you've got to then say, okay, what does it enable humans to do better, or to, which may be good things, as you say. They could be, you don't have to work as long. I think particularly in call center stuff, all the stuff I find really interesting is if you get the sweet spot right and all the boring stuff goes, and this is evident. This is evidence. Is the jobs become more interesting? The people spend more time dealing with the difficult, more interesting problems and providing solutions that human beings can do and computers can't. And I think those are really, really positive things. And generally speaking, I'd say they align with what has generally happened over history, which is that actually generally life gets better, and technology is usually, most of the time, an important part of that. Occasionally it's used to kill people, as we all know too. So that's part of its problem.
Yeah. No, but I agree. I think where it gets scary for me is if it increases fantasy and escapism.
Yeah.
So if it empowers a disconnect from reality to an extent where you're not really sure which is which, that worries me. And I was a gamer growing up, loved computer games, got incredibly absorbed in them, but where it's so much more real now, and if you are starting to live your life more there than you are in the real world, that worries me. But again, we've got to think about how we channel that, because people will be doing that. We're not going to go backwards on some of that stuff.
Yeah, and you have to check yourself on all of that, though, don't you? Because I can remember thinking that I will never, ever write a long document on a computer in a word processing environment, because I was so used to writing on paper. And I thought, well, young people will, of course, but it won't be as good as what I write on paper. But I nearly write everything now on a computer. So it doesn't... your perception is no guide, is it, to what will actually really turn out in reality.
And that's what I mean about humans marching forward. We adapt, we learn. I think, I read books both on my phone, bizarrely, on Kindle, and I still love paper books, and I blend the two, and that suits me well. But, I remember thinking nobody's ever going to go pure electronic books. We love books too much. What we've ended up with is a hybrid. And, some people are pure electronic, but most people still like actual physical books as well. And it's horses for courses.
Well, it's like vinyl, isn't it? Like, it's the fastest growing medium in music now, because whereas on the face of it, it doesn't make any sense at all. No sense at all.
I've just, because it's my era, I've just bought, it's a Bang & Olufsen Bear Vision, and it's the CD player that's a 5 strip, and the arm moves. It's robotic, and it's beautiful, and it's very much of the 90s. They don't make them anymore. And it's CDs. But CDs were my era. I remember when they came out, we were like, "Wow, you can't break these things. You can't scratch that." Well, of course you can. But, we didn't know that then. We were very wildly optimistic. And yes, it means not plugging in a kind of receiver that can start playing Spotify. You stick to CDs, but there's something for me that's quite beautiful to go back to, A, something that looks stunning, and then B, going back to something that I used to love and enjoy. And I've still kept all my CDs. Call me a hoarder, I don't know, but now of course they're coming into use. What I can't find is a CD holder, because they don't really sell those anymore. So I want a beautiful CD rack, but answers on a postcard.
In a way, what you're saying, and I think about this a lot actually, is that we are becoming more and more aware of what's digital and what isn't digital, so that there is almost a backlash or a compensation. So vinyl being an example, or you go to the tactile, or I quite like drawing. I'm not very good, but I quite like doing it. So I've used quite a lot of apps where I draw. They're amazing. They are really, truly amazing, and they cost you $4.99 or something, which is kind of stupidly low price. And and Hockney does them, and so he can, a Hockney on an iPad is fine. But there's still a place, a really important place for that thing that isn't on there, is the tactile and the material and so on. So I wonder whether we just become more and more aware of the, as you say, with having hard copy books and not. We live in both, almost both parallel worlds in a way.
There's a great artist, I really like his stuff. He's called Matthew Leger, and I'll show you actually. He does a whole piece on he does paintings mostly, but he does this whole thing around the digitization of the world. And this is a hummingbird, if I get it. There we go.
Oh yeah, cool.
But it's got pixels coming out of the back, and it's that kind of pixelation of the real world. And his paintings do the same. So he does this amazing, because he's a fine art artist, amazing pictures of things, but then he just digitizes bits of it, or it's pixelated in places. And I love what that represents around our lives are becoming more digital. I think it's something to embrace. I don't like where you lose touch of reality, but being able to use technology to enhance your world and connect better and connect with people that you just wouldn't come across in regular life, to me is fantastic. And that's a fantastic use of technology. FaceTime, when I did my first video call, just seemed radical and space age. And now we barely think about it, other than, oh my gosh, is my hair a mess, or is my background tidy? It's just, you just do a quick video call. It's no big deal. And that's what I love about tech, that it becomes ubiquitous. It enables us, and we get used to it, and we move on. I'm a geek to my heart, and I have to say, when the iPod first came out, that was touchscreen, and you could scroll your photographs like this, and you could zoom in like that, I did weep a little tear in the Apple Store, because it was beautiful tech. Now we're so used to it. I almost want to zoom in on photographs, and I know people talk about 3-year-olds doing that. I want to do it when I can't see something up close. I'm going in to zoom in.
And It's just saying you're about the third person on this show said almost exactly the same thing, which is that technology, when it works like that, is magical. And you don't even need to think about it. You know, it just is. You know, what the iPhone does is magic. A good friend of mine, who we've had on the show, Bobby Turan, who's out of San Francisco, he said that's the magic. People in insurance don't need to think about that. That's already there. That's already happening. Is what do you do with your business after you've got that? He said, my problem as a technologist is who's going to replace that bit of magic with the next bit of magic. And I thought that's a great way of thinking about how it all works, really. Is it is going to run on, isn't it? It's just going to, but it's not going to take over, because I think we're probably conscious enough. A book you should read as well, just as a book you should read as a recommendation that you read is Ishiguro. It was the Booker. I think it's the Booker Prize winner and nominated. Is the Clara and the Sun book about AI and the companion AI, which I think is incredible. It's incredibly thought-provoking about all things technology and human. I thought it was a great book, actually.
Yeah, you don't want to ruin what happens in it. I listened to it rather than read it, but I thought it was quite thoughtful.
Yeah.
They are thoughtful books anyway.
Yeah. But it's interesting that those sort of people are writing about AI. So that's sort of mixing. Yeah.
Very good. Rachel, great to spend time with you and chat to you. Thank you ever so much for sharing your insights and thoughts. And look forward to seeing you in the real world at some point in 2022.
IRL. No, thank you very much. It's been fun to chat. Good to see you guys.
Still there?
I'm still here. Yeah. That was great, wasn't it? She almost in that bit kind of summed up that positivity and confidence around tech and digital that we were talking about at the what we felt like at the conference. It was a really good. It was almost like we planned it. Obviously, we recorded that a few weeks before the event, but uncanny actually. What she was talking about and the way she was talking. It was good.
Yeah, well, it really does feel like, and we've talked about this before, about how rhetoric seems superficial, but then when it all starts to come together, and I think that's what we're experiencing a bit this week, is that the way that people are talking about things is starting to come together, and that's where the optimism comes from, really, which is good. Whereas actually a lot of tech conversations in the past have felt very clunky to me.
Yeah. Very good.
They don't need an 800-page PDF.
No.
Roadmap 9.
Right. Good to see you again this week, Ben. Good to see you today. What are you doing this weekend?
I'm not doing anything at all, really. I've got a week off. There's no football. Just going out on. I'll go to my in-laws on Sunday, that's all. I might ride down. I might cycle down if the weather's nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful now. Good. I don't think I've got... Oh, yes, I am. I've got my Christmas present. I'm going to see... we're going to need a bigger boat, which is a play in London.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it's like. I can't wait. So
that'll be good. That'll be good.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We won't see you next week. We're off, as Ben said, half term, but we'll be back the following week. But thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Have a great one. Enjoy.